You might know of the two biggest factors when it comes to the Pokemon community. I mean, yes, there's a lot of things you might know it for. But we aren't talking about that. No, we're talking about challenges and mods. Because of this, one really popular thing to do is make challenge mods like Radical Red or Blaze Black. And because of that, we have a pair of really cool mods right here. Pokemon Divine Sword and Blessed Shield. This mod was made by both a friend of mine, Kobazco, and a friend of theirs, Fives, and it's super tough. This changes where Pokemon spawn, their typings, abilities, movesets, and all of that kind of stuff. Most importantly, it changes trainers, and this is what makes it the hardest run I've ever done in Pokemon. Starting like normal, I picked my starter, going for Sobble, my favorite. Immediately, I was shocked to see that both me and Hop's starters had their hidden abilities, so Scorbunny was able to change typing at a moment's notice. This proved to be an issue later down the road, but I managed to win my first battle. There's also two things that I forgot to mention about this mod, which is that using items in battle is disabled, and playing in set mode is recommended. For those of you who don't know, set mode is when you can't switch Pokemon after beating your opponents, making this quite a bit harder. The Pokemon in the starting area are quite different from usual, and I gotta put together a bit of an interesting team. If you're wondering why I didn't use 6 Pokemon at the start, I was a little overconfident and wanted to limit myself. Anyways, I did end up losing the second battle to Hop because of his Scorbunny's ability, Libero, and the fact that it had a held item as well. This was all fine though, since this battle didn't care if you lost. Everything from there was pretty smooth sailing, until I got to the next Hop battle. You'll find it to be quite common for me to run into trouble when battling Hop in this playthrough. Now, like I said, the moves Pokemon learn are rather different in this mod, so our recently evolved Drizzle has a more expanded moveset. Sadly, however, all of the moves were physical attacks, so that wasn't entirely relevant. After barely beating Hop, and losing many times in the process, I got to the next route. Here I got two of the Pokemon that I used the most, Nidoran and Dunsparce. Nidoran was definitely strong early game, but eventually took a backseat. I don't want to spoil it though. Dunsparce was no slacker either, having actually been one of my top Pokemon. Not too long after that, we fought Bede for the first time, and it wasn't so bad actually. Drizzle actually did have a really useful move here, Bell Stinger. It raises her attack when she beats a Pokemon, and was a super effective bug move against Bede's entire Psychic team. Not to mention that being we were low level, made the fact that Drizzle's attack stat is worse than her special attack not that big of a deal. The moments after this though, those were pain. Milo took me completely off guard when he brought 5 whole Pokemon with him, and even his opener had Eviolite on it. At this point, I had switched to using a full team, and looked to getting the typings and moves I would need. However, this wasn't easy, because we were still early game, and I didn't just want to over-level and call it a day. For Milo, the first gym leader alone, I spent 8 full hours trying to beat him. Eventually, I had gotten things just right. I threw out Nidorino first, against his Tangela. To win, I needed to set up, laying down Toxic Spikes to weaken the rest of his team, and using Focus Energy so I could get fairly consistent crits, while Tangela sapped my health with Leech Seed. The next biggest hurdle was Dubwool, a fully evolved Pokemon, which isn't actually a grass type. I think you can see why this mod is so hard. This thing's defense was off the charts, and it did serious damage too. So that's the main reason why I set up Toxic Spikes. I had a Stuffle with Baby Doll Eyes, the priority attack debuff, and Fluffy to help survive even longer. This thing was a lot faster than all of my Pokemon, so having a priority move was useful, but I just needed to hang on long enough for the poison to kill. The unfortunate thing here is that while the Fluffy ability halves physical attack damage, it doubles fire type damage, and the Dubwool had flame charge anyways. Luckily, I was able to hold on until the next Pokemon. This one was immune to status ailments, so I couldn't just wait it out. I attacked with a Carkol, but it couldn't handle Milo's Cherrim very well. Carkol did a good enough job though, letting my Nuzleaf take it out. Milo sent out a Lombre next, which was just as much of a menace as the rest of his team. I got it to low enough health for the Toxic Spikes to finish it off, and switched to my tankiest team member, Dunsparce. The reason I used Dunsparce is because I needed to wait out his Eldegoss's Dynamax. Dunsparce was actually such a good tank that it could run out the entirety of Eldegoss's transformation. Not only that, but with Bulldoze, I got to lower the speed of the Eldegoss, which was another factor I needed to limit. Using Fake Out to get us another turn of Toxic Spike damage, and I set up 2 layers, so the damage increases the longer it's out. The Eldegoss got low enough to eat its Citrus Berry, and I was down to my last Pokemon, Drizzle, who was weak to Milo's attacks. I equipped Drizzle with Silver Powder to boost Fell Stinger, Dynamaxed, and finally beat Milo. Later, I ran into a troubling double battle, which actually opened my eyes up to a new move I never actually knew existed. This move is Parabolic Charge, an electric-type, health-stealing attack. Not only did this regain health, something that's hard to do while not being able to use items in battle, but it hit all Pokemon in a double battle. To top it off, I had an up-and-coming ground-type, Nidoking. Right after I was able to beat the 2 of them, I caught a Dedenne that actually knew the move. This Dedenne also became one of my best Pokemon throughout the run, having the ability Cheek Pouch. Dedenne actually has pretty decent special attack, speed, and survivability, not to mention a good typing and move pool. Later I got into a battle with Hop and found out he had a new big player on his team that tripped me up. A custom ability was given to Eevee in this mod, being Genetic Instability, letting it essentially do exactly what his starter's Libero does. Luckily, this was a double battle, so I could immediately put Dedenne and Nidoking to use. I poisoned with Toxic Spikes, paralyzed with Nuzzle, doing my best with Parabolic Charge too. After just a few tries, I managed to get a win with the only casualty being Nidoking. Next thing was that I wanted to get my hands on good held items, and the city we needed to go to had just that. Normally. This mod actually removed the Incense Trader's normal trades, and replaced them with single-use items. The other trader had citrus berries for super cheap though, so that was good enough. Off we went to fight Nessa. This went much better than Milo, only taking a few attempts. Dealing with things such as rain, switching moves, and just really strong Pokemon was pretty hard, and thanks to her Tentacruel, I even learned that poison types remove Toxic Spikes. Her first Pokemon, Seeking, was Trouble with a flying type move, so I tried to lower its attack, and it paralyzed me. After a bit, I took it out and started trying to weaken her Whiscash too, which spammed Dragon Dance. Since it wasn't working out, I switched to my new Pokemon that I got from a trade, Whimsicott. With a 4 times effectiveness, it was easy to take out. Next was a Tentacruel, and at this point, I was down a few Pokemon. The Dedenne was the best one to take it out, with electric type attacks, and paralysis. The only downside was fairy typing, making it weak to poison. The Dedenne had good enough special defense to tank it though, and I took it out soon after. Her next Pokemon was Barraskewda, which I knew outsped me, and would use Flip Turn to switch out into her ace, Dreadnought. Because of this, I went for Nuzzle so I could paralyze Dreadnought, which was actually faster than a lot of my team. The Flip Turn nearly dropped Dedenne to 0 health, but she lived and recovered with Cheek Pouch. All I had to do from here was try and run out the Dynamax form. Hyper went down, but not before doing a ton of damage. Next was Dunsparce, who I went so far as to Dynamax, and tanked all of Dreadnought's attacks with. Not only did I run out the Dynamax form, but I actually killed the Dreadnought with Dunsparce too. Finally, Nessa swapped back into Barraskewda, which Whimsicott was able to one-shot with Giga Drain. After that was the next battle with Bede, which was actually even easier than the last. You see, since Bede uses primarily Psychic types, my newly evolved Shiftry, who is a Dark type, was immune to almost all of his attacks. Later, I battled Marnie for the first time, which was actually quite a bit disorienting. Her team was all Dark, but had interesting dual typings, not to mention a Zoroark. After just a short while, I beat Marnie, and moved to the third gym. Once I went to battle Kabu, I brought a Sudowoodo and a Shuckle. I was immediately presented with a problem when I learned that his very first Pokemon, Ninetales, had both Drought and Solar Beam. This meant that Kabu would have a supreme advantage right from the get-go. Anyways, this told me not to use Rock or Water types at the start of the battle. Despite that mishap, my Dunsparce actually made good work of the Ninetales, and I got Kabu down to his last Pokemon, but in a bit of a poor situation, and I lost. On my very second attempt, I started with Nidoking, so that I could get my Toxic Spike set up early. Nidoking was able to take Solar Beams from Ninetales while setting up, letting me even get some damage in on it. After that, I unfortunately lost Dunsparce due to unfortunate RNG, and my Sudowoodo finished the Ninetales off. Next was Torkoal, which took out Sudowoodo easily, and I tried to finish the Torkoal in one hit with Inteleon, because I was able to one-shot it before. However, even though it was already hurt, had Toxic, and I was a higher level this time, it didn't kill, but Inteleon lived long enough to finish it. Because of this, I used Shuckle to try and hold off Kabu's Pokemon for a bit, letting Toxic deal the damage. After his Blaziken killed Shuckle, it was at low enough health for my Dedenne to take the win, and Dedenne had to face off against Arcanine next. Once Dedenne went down, I thought I was done for, because Inteleon was just shy of dying, and Arcanine had extreme speed, with 2 more Pokemon behind it. As a last-ditch effort, I Dynamaxed Inteleon, and she performed a miracle. She survived extreme speed, dealt 4 times effective damage on Heatmore, and last but not least, Inteleon was able to even one-shot the Dynamax Centiskorch. I was fully expecting to not kill, and to even be slower, but amazingly enough, we won. Now that we had the badge, I had to get to the next gym, which was a little tricky. The trainers on the way there were actually quite tough, but what was worse than them was Hop. While I took my first look at Hop's team, the game gaslit me by telling me about how badly Hop lost to Bede, and I found out something terrifying about Hop's very first Pokemon. He sent out Kangaskhan, which had the ability Parental Bond. Now, as you may know, that is not an ability it should have. This is the ability of Mega Kangaskhan, which doesn't exist in this game. Much like Eevee's genetic instability ability, this made things tricky. Luckily, I had a Rocky Helmet, which meant that the fact it did a second, weaker attack worked in my favor. I put that on Dunsparce for the time being, who was my best tank, so it was a good strategy. I knew I wouldn't win easily, so I used this attempt to just see what Hop's team was, and it was a good idea. You see, not only was there a Kangaskhan, but Hop also had a very scary Flygon, a Cramorant with a Power Herb, and his Cinderace, of course. Hop obviously had a full team of 6, but the others were less inconveniencing. Still dangerous obstacles, though. Now, the reason why the Cramorant is so scary is not just because of the Power Herb, but because it is faster than all of my Pokemon, and also its ability. The Power Herb was used for Dive, so that it could use 2-turn moves instantly, and its ability puts a fish in its mouth when it uses Dive. This means that whenever I hit it, no matter what, it will hit me and lower my defense, even if I one-shot it. My best Pokemon to beat it, Dedenne, would be immediately met with Flygon. While Dedenne is a Fairy type and Flygon is a Dragon type, the fact that it was a Ground type gave it an advantage, and Dedenne didn't really have any good Fairy moves. After a few hours of attempts, I managed to get the perfect strategy down. I moved my Rocky Helmet from Dunsparce to Shuckle because it was a much more expendable Pokemon, being a lower level, only really being a good stall. Shuckle's typing also made Hop switch to Cramorant when Kangaskhan died, and Dedenne swiftly took it out. The Pokemon I used on Flygon was Dunsparce, because Flygon had U-turn, which would make it switch to Doublade, and I could switch from Dunsparce back to Dedenne. Unfortunately, Dunsparce got burned right from the start, and the Flygon wouldn't use U-turn for the longest time. Eventually it did, after I stalled with Roost, but after switching in Dedenne, she died. Inteleon had Shadow Ball, so she was the next best one to take it out. I then used my Whimsicott against Hop's Maractus, dying, and took out its last bit of health using Inteleon. Hop switched into Flygon, and I sacrificed Nidoking to it, so I could hopefully let Dunsparce have a chance to take it out. I tried very hard to paralyze it with Body Slam, having a 60% chance due to Serene Grace, but was unlucky. I still did enough damage for Inteleon to beat it by outspeeding with Snipe Shot. Lastly was Cinderace, who Inteleon was able to tank a hit from, and one-shot. After such a hard battle, I went off to the gym. I got a few Pokemon specifically for the gym, being Skarmory and Ponyta. My team was actually far better built for this gym than I had thought, having so many fairy types, along with my new Pokemon. The gym ended up being a double battle, which also worked in my favor a bit. I opened with Ponyta and Dedenne, paralyzing one of B's Pokemon, so I could basically single out the other Pokemon on the field the entire battle. Ponyta went down pretty fast, but things went really smoothly in this gym aside from that. B's hardest Pokemon to deal with was honestly Pangoro, who tanked a lot of hits, but eventually went down. Soon enough, I got B down to her last Pokemon, with 2 on my side, her Machamp against my Dedenne, and Inteleon. After both of us Dynamaxed, I brought it down to nearly half of its health and used Nuzzle to paralyze it, avoiding all damage. After that, I hit it with everything I had, and just like that, we beat B on the first try at that. After roughly 30 hours, we were halfway through the game. However, I think I'm going to have to cut it there. This mod is incredibly hard, harder than I thought it would be, and I've been sinking a lot of time into it. The next half will be up soon, and if you want to see it, be sure to subscribe. If you want to play this mod yourself, the link will be in the description. I hope that you all enjoyed watching, and with that all said, I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye!